Hi, my name is Lena and welcome to this episode where I will show you 4 different tips for live performance when you have multiple songs in your set and you don't want to go between live sets, but you just want to keep all the songs in one set. You get me? Okay, let's get into this tutorial. Hi. Welcome to LNA Does Audio Stuff. As I said, this episode is all about live performance. I will show you all these tips in Ableton Live as well as in PushTube. But don't you worry if you don't have a PushTube, it just works as Ableton Live by itself. If you're new in Ableton Live performance, you might want to look at some of the videos I've done previously about live performance of PushTube, and I'm gonna link them down below. Also, I just wanna give you a little reminder that I have a song coming out on the 7th of June that was part of the last video that I did with Liam Killen. So we created a songs in this kind of cool collab video thingy. Follow my social medias for more info. You can check it for me. Anyway, let's get into this tutorial. So, the first tip is groups. So, first thing about groups, you can launch scenes inside of a group. So you can do that both in Ableton Live as well as PushTube, and that allows you that you can just concentrate what happens inside of the group, and then you can move into the next song and do the same thing. A group also is great for the volume. So what you can do is that when you have one track, you can just handle the volume of that track from the slider of that group. If you keep all the faders of all the songs down and then you just lift that one, then that will help you not to cross over accidentally between the tracks. Very good tip there. Also, what you can do is add effects on that group track. So you can, example, make one song sound a bit different than the other, or you can just play around a lot with the effects while you perform, which is very cool. So groups. Number 2 is crossfade. So Ableton Live has this amazing ability to work a bit like a DJ deck. So we can assign some of the tracks to be A and some of the tracks to be B, and then we have a crossfade and different fading styles options. When you right click the fader thingy on the master track, you can get different fader options. So there is a lot that you can get as much smoother crossover example between songs. So you might not want to have a full like stop between the song, so this one definitely will help you because you can go like one song and then go like ooh to another song. That was seamless transition, by the way. Ooh, that was what I tried to express from myself.
Also, there is a Max for Live device for the push, so you can use the crossfade with the push touch strip. This allows you to turn it on and off for the smooth transitions during your performance. I'm also gonna link this device down below.
Okay, so the third tip is tempo changes and warping. So many of you might be already familiar with warping, but in live performance, it's definitely very important. So when you import clips into your session, you can match them into the global metronome, the global BPM of the whole session. So then every single track will follow the tempo change that you do from the actual BPM change, metronome. So to be able to do those type of tempo changes, you need to warp all the tracks. Ableton Live is great for the warping fact that when you import anything into the session, it automatically analyzes the clip and adds this warp markers to it. So when you just click the warp toggle button on the clip view, you will get one marker on the left side and one marker to the right side. So this is for the very simple, straightforward clips that has a clear rhythm. If it's not that clear sample, you can create these warp markers by yourself and manually edit that it will be in the time. I will be making a more extensive warping guide further in the future. Also, very good tip, so when you are changing tempo between the sessions, so after you have warped everything and you're making sure that all the songs, all the samples are in right time, you can just basically, with push 2, you can change the tempo, very simple, from the top left corner, or you can tap the tempo. In push 2, you just tap the tempo in the left top corner, or in Ableton Live, you can use the mouse to click and tap the tempo, or you can key map tap the tempo into one of the keys, and that means that you can just use it instead of mouse scrolling awkwardly. You can actually just use your finger with one of the keys. You go to key map, you go to tap tempo button, and then you select a key where would you want to assign that button to. So when you click that, like that, you will then select the tempo change for the session. But there is a possibility that some of you don't want to change the tempo during the session, that you find it too awkward, too clumsy, you just don't feel comfortable doing that. You would just want to go from one song to another without touching the BPM button. Well, there is a possibility to do so. It's less flexible when you're jamming with other people, but if you do it by yourself or you're not doing live looping or anything, it is possible to do that. So what you just do is that you just leave the samples you import to the session unwarped. You leave them into the session without warping. That means that they will be in their original tempo. But what if you want to loop that sample in its original tempo? Because if you leave it without warping it, it will not loop. If that's the case, you need to do that manually. So you would need to still warp the sample. And after that, you use the warp markers to stretch it either way to make it sure that it's in the right tempo. And then you can, of course, crop the clip and make it so that it's in the tempo and it's the length that it needs to be. It needs some adjustments, so it can be a bit awkward if you want to do it this way. Or you use the segment BPM, so in the sample, its own little BPM section, and you manually kind of scroll it through to make sure that it's in the tempo that you want. So this is a bit more awkward, but I personally used it in the beginning because I found it more easier than changing the global BPM. Whatever floats your boat. Okay, and then we got into the fourth thing. So the number four tip. The number 4 tip is drum rack. So drum rack is something that is very useful if you like to use samples of finger drumming to go between the songs, or in the push 2 you don't want to go between note view and session view. So having just one drum rack that has different samples that you can just kind of finger drum and lounge from the drum rack instead of the session view can really allow you to be flexible in your performance going between songs. This technique is definitely a good one if you are more prone to finger drumming or just lounging, kind of playing the session with fingers instead of just kind of pressing one clip and letting it play. Yeah, and this one works definitely if you don't have push 2 but you have other launchpad situations or MIDI controllers on the stage. Yeah.
snowflake singing. Do 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 do. World is burning.
I think those were my 4 little tips for live performance when you perform a multi-session in one session, multiple songs in one session. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you, truly. And by the way, can I just say, I have new plans in my studio. Woo, woo. The one plan that I had in here, that maybe died. Maybe a little bit. So I bought new ones. And my plan is to keep these plans alive. Anyway, well, I'll see you next week, shall I?